Hello everybody, I am here to walk you through your 8.10 activity for Health Science 2. And so we're going to be going over these questions together. Just in case you missed one or need some help, you can skip through the video as you need, or just follow right along if you're starting from the beginning. So what you see here is the version of the document that I'm going to be working through. It says we're looking at this graph here. Let's get started there. And this graph is telling us information about a researcher who's testing the benefits of a new fever-reducing drug. Assisting with this study, the drug is given at noon, and the patient's temperature is taken every 3 hours for 24 hours. So we should see 8 dots on the graph for each patient. The results of 4 patients have been recorded on the graph. We're going to use this information to answer the question. So, which patient has the biggest difference between the high temperature and the low temperature? In order to calculate this, what you need to do is you're going to look at the initial temperature for each patient, and you're going to try and approximate it because you can see on the graph it's not giving you exact numbers here. So for this patient in the red, which is patient B, their temperature is about 102.3, okay? So we're going to take our calculator, and we're going to do 102.3, and we're going to subtract the low temperature at the end. Okay, so their low temperature was around 101.9. 101.9, that tells us there was only 0.4 degrees difference in their temperature. You need to do that for each of the patients, taking their initial temperature and their lower temperature down here, and then you're going to be using those numbers to find out who had the biggest difference, which means that number that you're looking for is going to be the largest. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you exactly what the right answer is, but I did tell you how you could calculate it. It says between which hours does the most significant drop in temperature occur for most patients? So I'm looking at the trend downward in temperature. So the one that's most obvious to me is the one on patient A, this blue line, where it's pretty high up here, and then all of a sudden it just significantly starts this decrease. Over here, patient B doesn't really have much of a change going on, so it's kind of hard to use patient B as an example. Another big drop right here happens for patient D at 0 hours all the way down. And then for patient C again happens about 2100 all the way down here. So the consistency that we see is between 2100 and 0. Okay, so that's kind of the timeline that we're looking for number 2. Number 3 says, for which patient was the medication the most effective? For which patient did it benefit the least? Okay, we're using our numbers that we kind of calculated up here in number 1. So the biggest difference, obviously, is going to be the one that it affected the most. So your answer for number 1 and 3 for the most effective will be the same. And then it says, which patient did it benefit the least? This one is fairly obvious, but it's the one that has the lowest difference between its initial temperature and the final temperature. Okay, number 4 says, express the number of patients who saw their temperature go down by 1.5 degrees to those who did not as a ratio. Again, same numbers that we calculated for number 1, so you might want to write those down. Okay, if they have seen a temperature change about 1.5 degrees or more, you're going to put that number first. Remember, a ratio is expressed separated by a colon. Okay, so if I am to write this in a ratio looks like 1 to 1, 2 to 1, etc. Because there are 4 patients, your ratio, the numbers should add up to 4, meaning your ratio will either be 1 to 3, 2 to 2, 3 to 1. Okay, it wants you to have the ratio written for those that went down by 1.5 degrees. So how many patients was that to those who did not? Okay, in that order. So make sure your order is correct. Again, to figure that out, you're using your numbers from number 1. Last question, number 5, that deals with the graph. Predict each patient's temperature for the next 3-hour period. based upon the information in the graph and explain the reasoning in your answer. So basically, we're just trying to trend what's been happening to this patient over time. The way that you can calculate this is by looking at each segment, each time period for each patient, and calculating the difference between them. So what's the amount of degrees that went down here? What's the amount of degrees that went down here? What's the change in degree here? Change in degree, change in degree. You're going to do that for all of those in between segments, and then you can average them out. Okay, when you average them out, it'll kind of give you an idea of what's going to happen next. So it does take a little bit of math. Okay. All right. So then we move on to part 2. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, healthcare jobs have been growing in number for the past 50 years. Using the data in the table, create a chart to illustrate the growth of healthcare jobs. You can either use a line graph or a bar graph. It can be done on a computer or on graph paper to be scanned and photographed. You can take a picture on your cell phone, whatever works for you, as long as I can read it. When you've completed the graph, create 3 questions that could be answered based on the information provided in the graph. So you're kind of questioning me here, but you also need to supply the answers to those questions that you choose. Okay, so let me pull this up really quick so I can help you figure out how to graph. So there's our data table that I gave you. If you go to Insert at the top of your document, if you're in Word, you can insert a chart. Okay, and then you can decide you want to do a bar graph, you can do a line graph, whichever you prefer. When you push OK, by the way, you might want to make sure that you're only using the amount of lines that you need. So for example, you'll need, let's see, how many years are there? There's 6 years. So you're either going to have 6 bars or you're going to have 6 dots. So I would just recommend that you're making it easy on yourself. Okay, so you can click a line graph or bar graph, whatever you choose, and then you have to fill out this table to help you. And again, because we're only using one type of line, you can delete these columns here because we only need one line. And then you just need to relabel these. This isn't going to say series 1. You need to read what is given to you on the data table for what you're going to label for your lines here and your categories over here. Play around with that a little bit and see how it changes your graph, and then you can go from there to see how your graph turns out. There it is, easy as pie, just sitting in your Word document ready to go, and then you can resize and put your 3 questions that pertain to your graph underneath. Okay? And that's it, you guys. Nothing too crazy. Good luck. I'm sure you'll do fine. Hopefully this explanation helps you a little bit. All right. See you later.